So welcome to the second panel discussion of this conference. If you can come up on stage, everyone, we can start by a few rounds of introduction. Just come sit down.
I'll right in.
I know that some of you are. I think you're fine wherever you want to sit. Maybe look fun. So if you can start, you can just take turns saying who you are and how long you've been working with NSO and a little bit of your background on this.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Mark Swanborough. I'm from Cisco Advanced Services. I've been working with NSO just over 2 years. My background's in software systems. I started out Java and PLSQL developer, building network management OSS systems. I now call myself a platform guy or a systems guy because 6.5 years at Cisco, I've learned a lot more about networking than I ever really wanted to know. Yeah, that's me.
Where are you actually located?
Oh yes, I'm located in Sydney, Australia.
Thank you.
I'd love to be in Sydney, Australia. But I am based here in Stockholm. My name is Kristian Larsson. If you didn't catch that yesterday in my presentation, I work for Deutsche Telekom. I've been using NSO for 4 years, I think, about 4 years. I've been with Deutsche Telekom for 3.5. My background is in network engineering, and I've sort of picked up a bit of programming along the way.
Hi, my name is Armstrong. I work for Telstra, so I'm also from Australia, but Melbourne, which is better than Sydney.
Yay! Let's go.
And I've been working on NSO, or with NSO, for about 2 years now. And before then, my background is a little bit of software, a little bit of networking, odds and ends, in my career with Telstra, which has been going for about 6 years. So now I'm in engineering and am an automation engineer.
My name's Dan Sullivan. I was told I was going to have my own mic. That's the only reason I agreed to do this. But yeah.
Get you a fake mic, man.
Yeah. Well, whatever. We'll work that out. I'm a software solution architect in the NSO pre-sales team in the Americas. I think 4 years, or a little over 4 years, and I used to do some services work as well. My background is in software development. There's a few people in here that know how many years I spent doing that, and I'm not sharing it with the rest of you, but it's been a while.
Where do you live?
Just outside of Boston.
Hi everyone, my name is Sebastian Strollo. What am I nowadays? I'm a principal engineer. I work in the engineering team, or rather in Victor's, what did you call our team?
I called it an architectural team.
Oh, well, then
I have no idea what you actually do, but...
So I was I was the first developer when the founders got tired of writing everything themselves, developing Confd, as TLF's first product was called. They called me and said, hey, come and join us. So I did back in 2006. And I guess I've been working with NSO then since it was just this pesky project that one of the founders said we should do together with Stefan. And we were making fun of him until he proved that it was actually a good idea.
Where'd you live?
I live in Mountain View, California.
Nice.
Cool.
So the idea about this session is to try and make these very smart people share a little bit about how to succeed with an NSO project, and hopefully get a little bit of discussion around what it takes to do that. So if we start with you, Sebastian, since we're on that side, if you have a customer starting out with a blank piece of paper and you just selected NSO, what are sort of the starting advice?
Well, I mean, I'm a techie, so I'd like to sort of look at the technical things. But I've come to realize that all, I mean, so in the past couple of years, I spent a lot of time working with customers as well as both internal and external customers, and sort of trying to help them out, see what problems they have. And I realized that a lot of it is so much more than technical. So I guess then a good starting point would be to make sure you have buy-in from all of these organizations that typically span something as big of a project that introducing NSO is. And we talked, I mean, you talked earlier about sort of profiles. I mean, having a background in software and having a background in network engineering. And I think just as we've seen now in software, all the rage is to have smaller teams, but you always have, you integrate all the profiles in one team, so you have a tester on the team as part of your development team. But in NSO, you'll also have to add that you need the network engineers as part of your team as well. So I mean, I think a good starting point is to have all of those profiles and make sure you have buy-in from like operations. Don't go to them once you want to launch and things like that. So a little bit of preparation as part of the proof of concept shouldn't just be sort of the technical thing. Can I do this? It should also be, so how should I do it in the organization that I have?
Knowing that you've spent quite a bit of time with different customers, I guess the two perspectives are pretty cool here. So both Dan and Sebastian, I know you've spent quite a bit of time with a lot of customers, right? So you get to see patterns across. So walking into a room in a meeting, in a technical meeting, what are some of the things that you're looking out for to tell you that this is not going well? Or any like signals to go back and think, oh my God, this is going to need a lot of work.
Passing it on.
Sometimes you go into a meeting and they have this sort of boil the ocean idea. That usually scares me pretty much. So I would say that's probably the first thing. I think the second thing is sort of NSO, there is a learning curve associated with it, and I think sometimes that's discounted and people think they don't need to think about that piece of it, and so that's usually another sort of red flag for me anyways.
I just want to add in general that I don't think that this has anything to do with NSO, but if you set out to do automation of your network, you are bound to, and if you're going to do that sort of properly, you're bound to do development. And with I mean, I've been in the service providers sort of sector for my entire professional career, so I know how it works there, and we're not so used to programming stuff. So it is, as you've touched upon, it's a cultural shift. You have to get the right people in the room. Sometimes you're lucky and have a guy that knows both networking and software. Most of the time that doesn't happen, but you end up having some people knowing network engineering and other people knowing software, and hopefully you can get them to work together. But you have to realize that you need all of these walks of life.
Mark, actually, you've been in projects. I know any experiences you have from I guess, peeking into projects and finding markers of things not going so well?
Sure. I think the scariest room to walk into for me is one where the network engineer is there and he says, you know, everything is in the configs. You're from Cisco, you can figure that out for me. So, okay, but someone owns this. The life cycle, right? It's not like I can come in, I can take your configs, I can build you a service, and I'll build you a service model. But it's not going to fit the way you run your business. Right? So, you know, that kind of take my configs and make my network dance is not. It's that's scary. That's a big red flag. Yeah. I think some of the other things though is we try and educate. You know, bring the right people in the room. Make sure you have that operations guy. Make sure you bring in the networking guy. There's probably someone in OSS that needs to be involved. And we'll get them here. But they're never in the room at the same time.
Right.
And so you'll have a meeting with the OSS guys. Oh, can the network guy join this meeting? No. Why not? He's busy. All right, and then you kind of, the dysfunction within the customer ends up as dysfunction in the NSO package, which is,
Yeah, disclaimer, Mark and I actually worked initially together on our first use case, and I think the only thing I can add to that as well is it just stresses the difference of looking at stuff. So the particular use case in particular, and I do remember network people not turning up to meetings, yeah, the data modeling part. It's a different worldview for network engineers, and we made a very unfortunate choice in our keys because NSO at its heart is a database, which we are still unraveling today. So I suppose if all of a sudden you say, hey, so, you know, what is a service? How do you name that service and that service? And all of a sudden you get 4 different answers and you go, uh-oh. And then the one that killed us is, oh yeah, no, we've got this identifier. It comes from the BSS. It's never going to be in 2 different places at the same time, until it was. Actually, the record is 14 different places in the same time. So yeah, that's I can't stress the data modeling part enough, which is generally a software developer skill, as you know. But stressing that to your network guys can be quite tricky.
Thank you. Cool.
Well, to say about that, and I think that Kristian's point about it being very common to a lot of automation projects is true. So about that team, what does the team have to look like to be successful with NSO? What kind of skills do you need?
Yeah. I think we've gone sort of over that. You need these different people, right? That you need. It's sort of what if you sum up here, you need the operations people, you need the network engineer, you need the software developers. You also touched upon this really interesting topic, right, of modeling your services. So taking, what is in a company, the services, not the NSO services, but something that a business is selling. It's ingrained in the company, in the walls, sort of. It's distributed. It's in the heads of people. It's scribbled on notes here and there. Marius, the Telia guy here the other day, talked about this. The service definition that you have, not the one in NSO, but the service that you're selling. There is not one place where you have that. So I can totally see how this is a very, very, very big piece, because when you start working with NSO or any sort of software to do automation, this piece is crucial. You have to model the reality and express things in code, and if it's not clear what that is, it's gonna go boo-boo, as you sort of noticed there, right? So that is and I've seen this is a very big piece, actually. So that sort of skill in being able to perceive something that we have and then express that in Yang, really. I think that is a very important thing. I'm not sure that it's just a software developer skill, actually. Exactly. Exactly. It has to do with, I'll repeat that, it's a DBA skill, right? It has to do with databases. So you find that people that have been writing database schemas, in MySQL or Postgres or Oracle, whatever, doesn't matter. Those sorts of things, that's the same as writing Yang models. It's about finding, what are natural keys, what are artificial ones, how do you do, referential integrity between different things and so forth. That is a very important part. And it's natural. NSO is sort of model-driven, sort of. It is very model-driven. So it's bound to be a big part of it.
Yeah, it was pretty evil.
So Sebastian and Dan, here we go.
One more person that we haven't mentioned yet, but I think maybe it was you yesterday, or someone mentioned the project manager. You can't just throw together a bunch of sort of all these different organizations. You usually need someone to herd these cats and sort of to reach out, especially in larger organizations. Someone with skill there helps as well. Yeah.
Cat herder, yeah. So Sebastian and Dan, I guess, again, having spent quite a bit of time with a number of customers, if you had to choose either a room full of enthusiastic network engineers that would say, we're going to make this work, or an enthusiastic set of software developers that doesn't know much about networking, which one would you pick? Don't think about these people. Just answer from your heart.
My background is in software, so I go with the network engineers.
So you're burnt like that. I got it. Sebastian, okay, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think Dan's got a point. I mean, and I'm originally a software person myself, and I think, yes, I would have an easier time perhaps to communicate with that room, but it would scare me more because I would know that they would probably not have everything that was needed to actually implement whatever's going to go on in their network. So,
Mark, an opinion?
I'll make one more comment too.
Sure.
And the more software focused people you have, the more tendency they want to write software. Unfortunately, sometimes the best services are the ones with the fewest lines of code. So,
or zero, if preferable. I'm awkwardly between the two, but I'm going to have to go with the enthusiastic network guys as well. Network config isn't entirely like software, and our experience at least has been that you can scratch a network person with enough Python that eventually they start making packages, but it's actually quite tricky to go the other way around.
Ah, okay.
So I guess I'm the one with the network engineering background, and
There you go.
I'd go with the software people.
Trapped.
I'm sort of like, I don't believe in my brethren. I can't motivate it further, but I think that I guess I perceive a lot of the network configuration. You can, okay, we talked a lot about the modeling and stuff, but it's sort of, if someone can sit down and express all of these things like what you want, then it's the software people I think that you need to actually implement it. But it might be sort of, where do you set your ambition level? If you just want to push a bit of configuration, then maybe just teaching network engineers a bit of Python is enough. They can write templates in Python. But if you want to do closed loop automation, I'd go with the software developers. It requires more than you can sort of train a network engineer to do in a short amount of time.
And I mean, that's an interesting perspective. And we talked a little bit about the need for organizational support, but we as TLF often talk about the automation journey and sort of different stages. And I know that you and DT have a lot of aims towards closed loop automation. But if you look at an earlier stage, say NSO is a power tool to help network engineers be more efficient in their work, can we get that done with less management buy-in and with sort of a more limited disruption of the existing company? No, for us, anyone. I mean,
so we're not doing that, right? I mean, we're doing sort of the full-on, as you mentioned, closed loop, whatever. So I mean, I think there are actually some people out here that are better suited to answering this question that have, I believe, have a mix. They're doing like NSO services for some things. They're also doing these more, what they call device template-driven thing, day zero config. I personally don't believe in that, the sort of configuration that you can push to device and that never changes after that. It doesn't exist. From my experience as a network engineer working with service providers for over 10 years. What was the question again?
No, but maybe one of the others have an input on that. I think the question was, in the spirit of avoiding boiling the ocean, can we limit our scope initially with NSO to need less management involvement, less disruption? I mean, disruption is great in the future, but hard.
Yes, I think yes is the answer. You can. So I mean, if you want a few easy wins early on in your project to get further funding, I think the answer is yes. I mean, what I just said about a day zero never changing, but for a lot of people not having NSO or anything like this, I mean, you're struggling with other ways of pushing that configuration or updating it over time, and using something like device templates in NSO is probably a better way of doing that. So yeah, it's absolutely a stepping stone. You can do things with much lower implementation effort and cost, and yeah, stepping stones.
I'm going to answer this by asking the room a question. If you're an engineer, a network engineer, can you raise your hand, please? Now, keep your hand up if you've used Excel to build device configurations. Oh, okay. I thought there would be more of you. Really? No, but so I'd say almost every service provider I've worked with, at some point, you find the Excel sheet.
Yeah.
Right. There's the guy who's done the network build, and he did that with an Excel sheet. I think if you put NSO in the hands of a network engineer and teach them 10 minutes about XML templates, they're going to run with that, and there will be no more Excel spreadsheets to generate device configs.
So here's a follow-up to the original question, and Mark, I think you're the right person here. Have you ever been in a conversation with a set of engineers, and ideas come up, let's do this with NSO, and people go, no, that means we have to talk to management. Right? Let's not do that, because then we have to ask for permission. I mean, is that a boundary that you've seen?
It's normally InfoSec. No, we'd have to go talk to InfoSec.
Okay,
Yeah.
That's interesting.
I don't think that. I don't think most people are limited by the imagination of their management, right?
Okay.
It's normally maybe someone in ops who starts pushing back, but in my experience, it's InfoSec who start pushing back.
You agree, Clay?
I suppose it's ops and security. So for us, security, a new system, and everybody has that issues with building a new system. And it's a new system that's touching your most important asset, your network, which automatically means you get a whole heap of scrutiny. But there's also, it has been security and ops also for proving it. They're going, well, we're doing it fine. And then we're kind of like, well, no, you're not. Several outages, if you've been in the news, seen the news, would say, no, we're not. But part of it at the beginning, there's an awful lot of things like dry run commits and stuff like that, which isn't really the goal of an automated solution. A person looking at a differential is far more likely to make a mistake looking at a differential than the system is in generating it in the first place. But to get acceptance from your ops to begin with, you might have to build some of these bits and pieces. And that's the other area we had pushback from.
So let me just push a little further on that. So, but what you're saying is that there's literally nothing in your mind right now that you wanted to do with NSO that you think the organization would resist. See what I mean? That you actually had to.
No more than normal resistance to change.
Right. No more than baseline resistance to everything.
Somebody has to pay for it, which means you've got to convince somebody.
Yeah.
So no, definitely.
Sebastian, do you want to say something?
I was thinking about this sort of choosing that original, the original project that you want to sort of prove that NSO works for, because it's hard to make that right choice. I mean, if you do something that you could easily do with 5 lines of Perl or an Excel script, you've just bought a very expensive piece of software if you paid for it, or you're trying to prove that NSO can do something that's so trivial. And it goes back to a bit where you're going as well. Like, how do you prove that it actually can do automation? Is it through doing something that a script could do just as well? Right. And I mean, we've seen a lot of customers having problems with sort of then stumbling into all kinds of issues with. I mean, we've had presentations about out-of-band changes and things like that. That probably a script would probably handle it better in the end than if you've chosen something that would actually prove the automation case. So choosing that thing to prove that it works, that's actually, I mean, it's a bit tricky to get the right use case and start with that.
Right.
And for those of you perhaps who have seen a lot of customers, when customers have problems, what is the most common stumbling block that you see? Is it what we've been talking about with organization or skills or technical problems? Or what do you see with the customers? What are the hurdles to cross?
Yes.
So Sebastian, you're now tasked with actually, you for some reason you started a service provider, and now you're tasked with the project of introducing NSO. What's your main things not to do?
Well, I mean, I'd start with sort of having a clear goal. What the outcome? Why did I buy this? I mean, in the end, and we saw even Colin in the very first talk here. Sort of, we need to increase the top line, presumably, or was it just because it was a cool tool, or was it's just figuring out why we're doing this, and what's the vision for introducing this?
Why am I
and then
here
I'd sort of get that dream team of, but I wouldn't have that all software or all end network. I'd get the mix.
All right.
So, yeah.
That was easy.
It was very easy.
I don't know.
So
there's so many things there's so many things you need.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Yes.
You need everything.
But I will say, as far as NSO goes, what I find is that initially we have adequate documentation and adequate examples for the first sort of easiest thing that they do. And quickly after that is when customers go, wait a minute, how do I do X, Y, and Z? And that's what I see from...
yeah.
I'm going to get this.
Allow me. Yes.
Yes. Well, okay. Yes. If we limit ourselves to just NSO, if we try to imagine that we have everything else under control, since this is about NSO, what are the main advice? If we try to get advice that's NSO specific and not about automation in general, because, yeah.
Yeah, sure.
I think the difficult thing is finding the balance between just getting started and doing design. You do need to get started. You need to learn NSO. You can't learn NSO in a classroom. You have to learn by doing.
Literally installing and actually playing with it.
Yeah, you need to get started working with the tool. So a big mistake would be, let's spend 3 months doing requirements gathering workshops. No, that's not how you get started. But then the other thing would be, don't start by building your first service in 6 weeks, and then thinking you're going to take that into production, because you will have made mistakes.
And have you seen more or less successful ways of doing that? I mean, do you tell the project members that please spend half your day on this, or have you seen any differences in more or less successful ways of doing that? I mean, let me give you the anti-pattern. I'm not going to remove anything from your workload, but please do this too in between the meetings. See what I mean? Which never helped anyone, ever, right?
Yeah. So when the current team that I have, that we're working with a customer, we were originally asked by the customer, please do this nice waterfall process. Requirements, we could only get these people for a couple of weeks. So we want you to do 2 weeks of back-to-back workshops, and then they disappear. They'll never come back. And then, at the end, the ops guys, you only get them for 6 weeks of testing. Right? We've locked it in already. They're going to be there whether you're ready or not. So, well, okay, that's nice, but we can't work like that. So we still did a very agile, iterative, maybe not agile, iterative approach where in those first couple of days, in between the meetings, someone is there hacking some Yang models together and testing some concepts, and and throughout the process, you do have to iterate. Yeah.
Kristian, do you do this full time? Is this what you do all day, every day, or do you actually load balance with other stuff too?
This is what I do full time. Not right now. I'm on parental leave.
Right, exactly.
Or now I'm on leave from my parental leave here at the conference. But yeah, I code all day. I also try to have a sort of a lookout of our features, what we're doing, and I get a bit of overhead in communicating with other parts of my team on what it is we're supposed to be doing. So I'll answer the other question too. I'm not sure, it'll be on a different level, right? And it'll tie into what I said yesterday. So very much when you're starting out doing development, I think one of the very important aspects is that you sort of replicate so that developers can play around freely. Virtual routers, like I talked a lot about yesterday, is an excellent way of doing that. So if you have software developers, they're not very used to networks. I mean, even if you say there's a network lab, you can go play around at it. They're not going to be comfortable doing that. They have no experience with it. So replicating an environment where they can be totally safe, doing whatever they want, destroy the virtual routers, because nothing else will really happen, I think is an important step. Experimentation and learning are the early things you need to do, and you need to provide an environment where you can do that safely, right? Otherwise, you won't get anywhere, or it'll be a lot harder.
So in your experience, does that happen by itself then, or do you need an actual guided trail? Do this first and then do that, or does that just happen?
So I don't at all have the same experience as the guys around me here in dealing with lots of different customers, right? So I don't think I have the sort of statistical data points to answer that. I can only answer for myself.
Right.
I made it happen for me, right?
Yeah.
No one else came along and did it.
Right.
I mean, someone has to put in a bit of effort of doing this, obviously. I don't know how to, I mean, what the average sort of implementation strategy looks like, if it is bringing in Cisco AS, some other partner, or if it's manning up and doing it yourself. But someone sort of has to take the lead. I mean, for this to work, this is going back, I think, to a little bit of what you said here, you know, in this, first you get the network engineers 2 weeks, then you get ops guys over here for testing 2 weeks. Everyone needs to be sort of along, not the whole way, but throughout, you know, different points sort of. In that early phase, setting up things like this so that you can have, you know, the software guys, which are probably going to be there throughout the entire process. For them to be able to work independently, they got to have this sort of startup data. So for that sort of handover, you need the network guys, and this is where you put up that virtual router lab and all of those sort of things, right? But then it can be a little bit more disconnected between the different types of people you have on your team. But everyone has to be, just like you said, ready to sort of follow the project through.
Clay, do you get to do this all day? Is this your one thing, or is it a between meetings thing?
It's become more of the one thing, but I'm also supporting a lot of our old legacy EMSs as well, which is interesting because we're going to be putting those in as well. The best model that's worked for us, because now we've had quite a few packages and projects come through, and I would not be the best person to speak about this because I drew the short straw, my compatriots up there somewhere, has been when we've had, again, the network engineers working in concert with our developer, and then in turn, like a lot of service providers, we have a entire SIT process, separate team. It's been good recently where we've had them with us as well. So the whole process has been flowing from version to test, where traditionally we were very waterfall and you deliver to SIT and that was the end of it. It's been far more iterative. So when everybody's together, you can do a lot of stuff following the path. It's very difficult with this to create something and just throw it over the fence and then hope for the best, because it often has to come back around again. So that's pretty much what's worked best for us so far.
Cool.
I have to add things. Again, I talked a lot about CI yesterday, right? And now you're talking about SIT and testing and things. And we talked about InfoSec. So I've had my run-in sort of with the security guys at Deutsche Telekom. Pleasant and not so pleasant. But one of the nice things that I think that we've been able to do is that, I mean, we sort of worked out an understanding, and that some of the things that they are, you know, they care very much about on the secure front, we're able to incorporate tests for this in our testing environment. So, and obviously they're very happy with this. We can continuously prove that we meet a bunch of the security requirements that they have. And I think that's very cool, because usually when you do something, you have a sort of a delivery and then you send it over to the security guys, and it takes, God knows, I mean, security departments, they're usually not that staffed, so they can just go through that in a day or two. It usually takes a bit longer. So being able to, all right. So being able to integrate that into your testing environment, I've been very happy with that. I think it's a nice.
Excellent point. Yeah.
It's interesting because I was having a conversation internally about a month ago, and we're saying, overall, there's a greater emphasis on security. How do we do this better in all of these different customer projects? And I think we need to get a security guy in the room all the time, more or less, because for me, I had an interest in it. I've done quite a bit of reading, but I'm not a security guy by any stretch of the imagination, and I only know this tiny surface layer piece. You actually need a specialist, an expert in network security to help you get this right. I think they need to be there from right at the beginning.
So we had one question about, so one thing that you might have heard of coming quite strongly now is the cloud and the cloudification of pretty much everything. How much impact do you all expect that to have on orchestration automation in the next while?
I'll say a significant amount. So before I moved into NSO, 4.5 years at Cisco building cloud platforms and systems. So all of my automation was data center, firewalls, MPLS, VMware, Microsoft, Red Hat. The list is long, but it's inevitable. The move to the cloud is not going to stop or reverse. I think we're seeing interesting customers for NEDs that can talk to the large cloud providers, but also the companies that interconnect you to the cloud. So I think in the keynote opening sessions, Equinix, we're building a NED, I think, right?
There was questions of an Equinix NED.
I think that makes sense, and it's going to happen.
But does this actually fundamentally change networking or the need for automating networks?
More and more networking is going to go behind APIs, which is a good thing.
Well, I just think, virtualization, everything else is making this a necessity. Whereas, a few years ago when we started, there was some people saying, oh yeah, we got a bunch of scripts, we already got this solved, we don't need you. Today, there's much more complexity, and if you guys have all made their living prior to this just being writing Python scripts and things like that, I can't imagine trying to do that for an NFV deployment, right? It just can't be done. And in fact, one of the customers that we talked to said that they had a particular service that they deployed with NSO, and they had no backup plan as to how to deploy that same service any other way because it was too complicated. So that's the trend I see, anyways.
That's a great point. So, but I mean, if you talk to I talk about Ansible and the application crowd, and some of them would say networking is just in my way. Do we actually see networking actually getting out of people's way or being commoditized to the side or anything like that? Or is it like what Dan would say, actually it becomes more complicated, it becomes more involved, and actually as humans, it's like the old saying of that there's not a single human that actually knows how to make a pencil, but there's a lot of people that know how to build the parts. Are we getting to a pencil kind of thing here? No one, it's complicated enough that you can't really have a single human doing it, or is it going to be that just what the applications people would say, just a stable IP infrastructure? Which direction do you guys think this will do? I know you think about this, Kristian.
Yeah, I think it's going in all directions. You have some that are going to realize that they're a commodity. What's excellent with, I'll start like this. If we back up a couple of years and you try to buy an IP service, a VPN, or God knows what from a service provider, you had to call someone. You probably still have to call someone. You can go to AWS, right? Amazon's web services. They sell PCs, virtualized. They call it cloud. Google has something similar. Microsoft has Azure, right? And they all have prices. It's a fixed price list. SpaceX also has a price list for how much it costs to send a kilo of whatever you want into space. service providers do not have a fixed price list. That is going to change, I think. As in terms of services, it's going to change in sort of both directions. It's going to be very standardized. Off the price list, transit is already a standardized service, but other services as well, they're going to be standardized. But there is a fair chunk of people that believe that the service provider's ultimate role is delivering customized services to enterprises, because you can charge a lot for this. But in the end, I mean, I think you're being less of a service provider and more of sort of a consultancy service. I don't know which camp is going to win. I think that the consultancy service, I mean, there's probably a space for that too, but I think that the commodity is ultimately the sort of on the winning side. That's what we're going to see more and more of. There's a working group in the IETF working on standardized service models, not device models, but service models. If you expose these on your northbound interface, someone else could potentially purchase something from you over a standardized interface. That is a very interesting trend. I'm not sure of anyone that's actually exposing one of these models. I think there are some bugs in the ones released, so they're difficult to implement. But that notwithstanding, it's interesting because all of a sudden it becomes very easy to challenge the current provider that you have. You want to buy a new layer 3 VPN, you go out to a couple of different ones, you talk to their API endpoints that speak netconf and yang, and you say, I want this sort of VPN, and back you get a price for it. And then you order it over netconf yang API. Sorry? Right, and then you change if it's no longer the cheapest. So I think that's an interesting development happening in the industry. Let's see where it goes.
Yeah. So it's a yes then. That's what you're saying.
Yes, we've been inspired by the cloud, I think.
Okay.
I mean, many have seen this, of course, long ago, but having the cloud is definitely pushing it. The things that they're doing with these sort of AWS is called Direct Connect, right? I think when you have one of these links, that is, of course, affecting things. You're often shortening the distance that you typically otherwise buy your layer 3 VPN from your service providers. You just want an express route to AWS where you have your own servers or someone else's service that you're buying. Office 365 is probably not running in that cloud, but it could be similar. You're purchasing that as a service and you want direct connectivity, so you're getting some form of direct pipe, and that's all you're buying. Yep.
Cool.
More questions?
I think that was all the questions that we had prepared for you, and I think we'll try once more for the question I tried for earlier, and we can start over on this side this time. And that is, if we start a new NSO project, we try to want to strip away the generic orchestration question. What is the advice for the audience to succeed in their projects?
In a single sentence, even?
Yeah, a single
sentence
would be good.
Yeah. You have one sentence, Mark. The team is in front of you. They're just embarking on an NSO project. Okay, 2. You can have 2.
So the key to success will be collaboration between all these different roles that we've talked about.
That's one.
Because everyone brings a different perspective and a different expertise, and they are all required for a successful NSO project.
That's great. That's 2 great sentences.
I think it starts before. You have to realize you're setting out on a development project. That is what you have to understand before you start doing development with NSO.
Awesome.
That is sort of the key. But yeah, that too.
I know, you guys. Mark kind of covered it all. He just laid stakes on the entire ground.
I'm going to be oddly specific.
Yeah, sure.
Based on our first ever use case, because we started in very heavy brownfields. So be aware that just because you're writing an automation tool, you may have to remediate your network before you can actually get in there. And this can be a much bigger and longer thing than you anticipated.
Awesome. Very good.
So I mean, I guess this is sort of part of my job, if you think about it. From
yes.
a pre-sales perspective, I often go to customers and do proof of concept. And always what we try to do is they'll tell us, hey, this is what we want to do. And then I'm constantly trying to squeeze them down to reality. You know, start with something that's reasonable. You know, start with something that not so, you know, not just setting a few host names, because then you're adding no value and the guy with the Python script can do it better anyways, right? So that's one thing. And I guess the second thing is, and maybe I've learned this over time and I didn't totally have an appreciation for it, is sort of convincing them that it's sort of you're starting a software development effort. I'll tell you one funny story. I work mostly in the U.S. with large service providers, but one of the largest, one day I went in and they said, we're going to start this automation project and we want you to help us. I said, oh, okay. I said, well, where's the repository? And they said, we don't have one. And I said, I can't help you, and I left. You know what I mean? So that's a fine example of not really understanding exactly what you're getting into. So
start small, get a repo. That's what you're saying. Right. Those are your two sentences.
I mean, I'll start in a completely different. Have some fun. I mean, make sure there's room for fun. This is a. I mean, sometimes tools comes along that makes what you can do is so different that what you kind of imagine, what you thought you would do with it, actually, once you start experiment, you realize that it opens up completely new ways of doing things. And I mean, if there's room in your organization to actually sort of to start that small, do some experimentation, you'll probably come up with some other use cases that you hadn't even thought of when you started this whole thing. So don't forget to experiment and enjoy it. Try it out. Have some fun.
He does.
You guys are way past one sentence. So I get to go again. I just want to add to that. So I think that NSO, that is netconf yang done right. Model driven and all the sort of transformation between service models and device models. There's nothing else out there that is like it. So I absolutely agree. You have to have some fun with it and understand it, because it will change the way you think and perceive how you're going to implement whatever it is you're going to implement, which, by the way, is not at all limited to networking. You can automate whatever you want with this.
Thank you.
Cool. Thank you, guys. That was a long 2 sentences.
Yeah.
But very good. Very good insight.
Well done.
I think that kind of wraps it up. Thank you to the panel.